Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Environment Committee of Wednesday, the 29th of September. Before we go any further, I'll just hand over to Tina, who will read out the rules of engagement.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to all those attending the Environment Committee this evening and to those who are watching this meeting live via our YouTube channel. To those who are present with us this evening, I would just like to run through some brief housekeeping rules with you. Please could we ask you to use hand sanitizer when entering and exiting the room this evening, and you will find sanitizers located within the room should you require to use this during the meeting. We ask that face coverings are worn when moving around the room and are only removed when you are seated or standing to talk on an item. We are not expecting any test fire drills this evening. If you should hear a fire alarm, please make your way out of the room and down the stairs where officers will assist you to the evacuation location, which is across the road outside the Star Hotel. Anyone requiring help in the event of an evacuation, please make yourself known and the relevant assistance will be provided. Please can I ask that all mobile phones are either switched off or put onto silent mode. Members, I will remind you that should you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for myself or the chairman to acknowledge you, and your name will be added to those wishing to speak. When called to speak, you will be required to press the button on your microphone in front of you, which will turn red when active. Please can we ask that you speak both loudly and clearly into the microphone so those watching live can hear you. When voting this evening, members, this will be undertaken by a show of hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Just before I go into the substantive agenda, just to make members aware that item 7, due to staff illness, has been deferred to the next meeting. Unfortunately, the report's authors aren't able to attend the meeting today, and obviously I'm sure they will get well soon, but I'm sure the committee will join me in wishing them of speedy recovery. So, item 1, apologies for absence. I have one from Councillor Thompson, and I think everyone else is here. So, fantastic. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have something to declare? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. I declare interest in item 6. I am a member of Coastal Partnership East. I am the appointed member from Great Yarmouth Borough Council to Water Resources East and Broaden Futures Initiative, all of which are mentioned in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Bensley.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that I am also a member of Coastal Partnership East and Water Resilience as well, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bensley. Councillor Fairhead.
I'm not sure if it needs to be declared really, but I sit on the IDBs and they're also mentioned. So,
thank you. Councillor Cameron. Thank you. Just to remind you, just in case Tina didn't hear, Councillor Cameron was also declaring the Internal Drainage Board. I got the acronym wrong there for a second. Councillor Cameron, rather, if you could just remember to turn your microphone on to speak. If there's no other declarations, we'll move on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting, which is page 4 to 8. If I take them through, page 4, any comments? Page 5. Ooh, that's a bit. Right, page 6. I quite like that special effects. Page 7. Page 8. So, are members happy for me to sign that as a true and accurate record? Great, fantastic, thank you. Item 4, the forward plan on page 9. There has been a change which I was only notified of yesterday, is we're going to need to move the playground and open space review meeting to the committee on the 26th of January. That is because of the sheer scale of the work the officers are undertaking in doing the report. And obviously it is a significant piece of work, and so it's worth to take the time to get it right. Councillor Robinson-Payne, I do apologise.
No, I just wanted to make a comment on that. I think that's been going on. I know we've had a pandemic, and I do appreciate that, but this has been going on for some time. And the amount of complaints we're getting, I know certainly in my ward, from play areas that are not up to scratch. You know, I do think that's not really on to be going into a longer amount of time. I mean, we must be talking 2 years about this. So that's just my comment.
Councillor Waters-Bunn.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on Councillor Robinson-Payne. It's a comment regarding the play equipment. Can you just confirm, and can we find out, if the review's actually been done? Because how many children are realistically going to be using playgrounds and play areas in the middle of winter? The whole point of the review was to actually see how many children used which pieces of equipment, what equipment is used, which pieces aren't used, and take it from there. But if, you know, this person's been employed, it's only a fixed term appointment, it's not a permanent position, how much further are we going to be pushing it back, and has that study been completed? I
think Kate might be able to add a bit more. I would just say the review isn't just play equipment, is also a full audit of the full council open space property as well, so that it isn't just that component, but I do take your point.
So if I can just answer Councillor Robinson-Payne's query to start off with. If there are play areas that aren't in the condition that they should be in, and you pass that through to relevant officers and you don't feel that's being dealt with, could you please pass that information through to me? Because outside of any play review, we have statutory requirements to make sure that the play equipment is safe and in a good condition for children to use. So if there are outstanding issues that aren't being resolved, maybe we could talk about that separately, so I can get that addressed, because that should be happening outside any play and open space review. In terms of your query, Councillor Waters-Bunn, absolutely I can confirm and confer with Paul. The first stage of the work in terms of the appointment with the post was actually to map all of the outdoor places, spaces, assets that the council owns, and to get that on our system, because one of the problems that we didn't have all of that information in a central point, but as part of putting that information onto our electronic systems, the officer has also been going out, taking pictures of the play provision, understanding what's being used, what's the need of the area. But that has actually been a significant piece of work. I've attended the officer working groups around that, so I know progress has been made. And hopefully, as we say, it's on the full plan for the next committee meeting, you'll receive that information in terms of where they've got with that process.
Thank you. It's just I'm questioning the person that was employed specifically to do the play review. That appointment, that fixed term appointment, was a 9-month fixed term appointment. We've already recruited, haven't we?
Yes, so there might be...
That person's in post.
So there might be some confusion here. So when my colleague director Neil Shaw was here, he brought a proposal to this committee for a play officer to specifically look at the play review. Unfortunately, for various reasons, that post was never recruited into. So when I came back from maternity leave, I brought a paper to this committee saying that it wasn't a play officer that we needed. What we needed was somebody with a wider remit to map those assets and understand their usage, and to do more than what just a play officer would do. And that's the post we've subsequently recruited into, that I believe their contract is running until the end of the year, and that person will be at the committee next month when we're presenting that open spaces review back.
Sorry, Councillor Wells said it will be the January the 26th meeting. So
that is what I had been notified of.
So we'll be having the meeting about it after the person's contract has been terminated.
That was not my understanding, so can I just...
The email I had received was said they wanted to move it to January. Certainly, if we can have it done in the November meeting, that would be preferable.
What might be helpful for members is if I bring an update to the November. So if the work hasn't been completed, at least I can give members assurances of how far we are with that piece of work. So perhaps I can suggest, Chair, that whatever happens, we bring a kind of update and a position statement to the November committee, even if that work hasn't been completed, with the relevant officers, so you can ask some questions around progress against that piece of work.
I think that would be a very sensible move forward.
Apologies, I wasn't aware of that.
And outside this meeting, we can just pick up, because there seems to have clearly been some different emails flying around. So apologies, members, if I've inadvertently given you wrong information as well on that.
So it's coming to the November meeting?
There will be an update, whatever happens.
In November?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Whether that's the full review or not's a different matter. So, apart from that, our members have... Oh, I do apologise, Councillor Talbot.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I just wanted to echo what Councillor Watersbun and Robinson-Payne had both said and make one query with regards to this, because I know specifically in my ward, I know of, off the top of my head, 3 play areas, one of which is the George Street play area, which has sat with only 2 items in it for at least 4 years. And that's sat empty. And if they're reviewing what is being used and what isn't being used, how is a play area with only 2 items being used? I don't understand what's taking so long to collate the play areas that we've got and start putting equipment in them so they can actually be used. It's beyond frustrating. And I know that I've spoken to Mick Castle at length, who has told me he's been asking for years for more to go into that play area. So why has it sat empty with 2 items in it for longer than 4 years?
So I think, Carrie, I can understand your frustrations, but that's absolutely the importance of doing this piece of work, because historically we've put play equipment into areas without thinking strategically what is the need of that area, what's the type of equipment that that area needs, and actually what are the ongoing revenue and maintenance costs to the council to make sure that that equipment is in a good condition going forward. So I will make sure that George Street is updated at the committee update report that we get in November, but that's absolutely why we're doing this more strategic piece of work rather than looking at play equipment on a piece-by-piece basis, which is historically how we've operated as a council.
One further question I would like to ask that is related. Are we going to be sourcing play equipment locally, purely for the fact that there was...
Councillor Talbot, this isn't an item to discuss...
It isn't an item, I understand that, but this question is related to the George Street play area.
Well, this isn't a meeting about the George Street play area, Councillor Talbot. I'm very sorry. No, Councillor Talbot, please, can we... I fully appreciate it's an important issue, but when we're dealing with specific play areas, can you take this out of the meeting and have a conversation with the officers afterwards?
It's not necessarily about specific play areas, it's about the equipment as a whole. I just want to know if we're going to source it locally.
That's a policy question which isn't going to be answered today, unfortunately. So that will be dealt with once the full review has been done. So this is a meeting for the forward plan. It isn't to discuss items just in the general thing. So I do apologise, but we do need to move on. So apart from that, are members happy with the forward plan? Do I need a proposer and seconder, or just if we can take it by assent? All in favour? Thank you. So item 5A, we've got Jennifer Hobson from the Friends of Horsey Seals, who is going to do a presentation on their work. So over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right, everyone? Thank you very much for inviting me this evening. As said, I'm Jenny Hobson from Friends of Horsey Seals, and I've come to talk to you about our campaign to save seals from getting caught in these plastic flying rings. I can't hand the rings round because of COVID, but these are two examples. I've met a few of you as councillors, and you've already been a tremendous support in Great Yarmouth, so I thank you already for that. I'm going to introduce the seals, and then tell you how the campaign started, what achievements we've made, and what our future aims are. I aim to talk for about 15-20 minutes to leave a little time for questions and any discussion. There are 2 types of seal in Britain, and I'm sure some of you know about that, the grey seals and harbour seals. Harbour seals are also called common seals. One way to distinguish them is by looking at the nostrils. The grey seal on the left has vertical openings, and the common seal on the right has heart-shaped. Grey seals grow much bigger as adults than common seals, and their muzzles are longer than common seals. Grey seal pups can be more vulnerable than the harbour seal pups because for the first at least 6 weeks, they remain mainly on the beach until they're fully weaned and they molt that lovely white coat, which isn't fully waterproof. Whereas the harbour seal pups can swim a few hours after birth. We're blessed in the UK by having almost half the world population of grey seals. Grey seals are rare globally, and we have, as you know, some of the big colonies along the Norfolk coast. If you look at the number of pups that are born annually, at any one time there are thousands of seals swimming up and down the North Sea and going between us and Europe. Many people don't realise there are seals in the sea because they only haul out at certain times and at certain beaches in any numbers. These are some of the seals, and I'm sure perhaps all of you have seen them at Horsey Gap, which is just up the coast from here. And it's the beach along with Winterton that Friends of Horsey Seals monitor with up to 350 wardens, mainly in the winter during the grey seal pup season, but now also we have wardens monitoring all year round. If you look at the back of this image, you will see a seal which has a plastic ring caught around its neck. The loopholes in the law have been closed just from this year, so it is illegal to injure, harm, or kill a seal. And these are the main threats to seals, and I'm talking particularly about the second one, entanglement, and especially in these plastic flying rings. Sorry, just go back. Just a warning that the next several slides I'm going to show some of the stricken seals, and these slides can be quite upsetting, particularly if you haven't seen any of them before. We don't show this many to the general public, but I feel it's really important for people in your position to see them, to see what effects these apparently innocuous plastic rings can have on the seals. This is the first seal that we at Friends of Horsey Seals managed to rescue. And you can see that she is extremely thin. The reason for that is that as the ring cuts into the neck, it prevents the seal from extending the neck, which makes it hard or impossible to hunt. She was rescued, and the wedge-shaped wound is typical of a ring injury. The wounds that these rings inflict on the seals are absolutely horrendous. They're amongst the worst that we've seen, that the RSPCA have seen. The wounds get infected, they're very smelly, very deep, and the seals face a very long and painful death through starvation and infection. Amazingly, this seal did survive and was eventually released back into the sea. This seal was named after Sir David Attenborough, and you can imagine it's extremely difficult and dangerous to capture an adult wild grey seal. They're wild animals, they have a very painful bite. It's only possible when they get so sick that they might remove themselves from their group. And if they're frightened, then their immediate reaction is to go back into the sea. Once they're in the sea, they're impossible to catch. Our rescue team is very experienced and trained by the RSPCA, and they monitor the seals, sometimes for many, many months before an opportunity arises where they can go in and attempt to capture. What they do is to head the seal off and then capture it in a specially designed net. Very few of these seals, I'm afraid, have been captured for those reasons. I've been a volunteer for the RSPCA Wildlife Hospital at East Winch, just outside King's Lynn, for over 10 years. And that's my link with the seals. And one evening, I happened to be on shift helping, and this seal was brought in by Peter Ansell, the chair of Friends of Horsey Seals. She was, as you can see, at death's door. And when I saw her terrible injuries and the ring still intact on her neck, my heart broke, and I felt in that instant that I had to do something more to try and help stop this happening to the seals. I went to speak to Peter, and he spoke to the committee, and they agreed to back a campaign. We wanted an image for the campaign that showed the problem but wasn't too overwhelming for children and for adults. And this lovely seal image was painted by a local artist, Lorraine Orton. We also designed in-house this leaflet, which you have copies on your desks, to explain exactly what was happening to the seals. Because lots of people didn't know. I spoke to people that I knew, and they said, well, how does it happen? So I brought a prop with me to show you. So what happens is people play with these rings, and I won't throw it because I don't want to take any of your teeth out. People play with the rings, they buy them often from the beach shops, take them down to the beach, throw them, and they can easily get taken by the wind and end up in the sea. People throw them in the sea and then they can lose them. They're very cheap. These flying rings retail at about £1 or not much more. So they also can be discarded on the beach, and then the tide can take them out. And the young seals come along, and in the sea, they're very inquisitive animals, as you probably know, and they investigate the rings, and sometimes they put their heads through the hole in the middle. They then can't get them off because they have flippers, not arms like us, and all their movement is forward. Then they grow bigger and bigger into adult seals, and the rings cut deeply into their necks, resulting in the injuries and wounds that you've seen. The term flying ring is one that we used in conjunction with the RSPCA as a generic term for any sort of throwing ring, frisbees with holes in, and dog rings, anything like that, the seals can get their heads caught in. The campaign was launched on Winterton Beach, and that's Peter Ansell in the photograph. We had a very good response from members of the public and from businesses. We distributed the leaflets and posters all the way along the Norfolk coast from Great Yarmouth to King's Lynn. And over 100 school children got involved as well. This year, we've managed to get some beach signs up at the beaches. And this is our latest sign, which is an extension of the poster. And what we found was when we did a tour last year, some people were not getting the message. And so members of the public suggested we needed to make it absolutely clear, which the top line shows you, that these plastic rings can result in the deaths of the seals. So in the image, we've got beach signage that we managed to get up, including some at Great Yarmouth, I believe, and Gorleston Beach. We did a tour with a life-size grey seal model that another artist made for us last year, and that was in conjunction with North Norfolk District Council as part of launching their Safer Seals campaign. And in the top middle picture, you can see these solid frisbees. This is a plastic one, and this is one actually made out of bamboo. And it's the first one that I've ever handled. I'm very excited about seeing that. Both of these are safe for seals because they can't get their heads through the middle, but obviously the bamboo one has the advantage of being biodegradable. On the other side, you can see more schools got involved, and I gave a talk to years 4, 5 and 6 of Northgate Primary School here in Great Yarmouth. And the bottom picture is another school in Munsley where they did this sculpture. It's a seal with a ring round its neck riding a wave. And they did that for a competition. King's Lynn Council and North Norfolk District Council are considering the possibility of special place protection orders to ban the use of flying rings on their beaches. And here in Great Yarmouth, as I said, there has been tremendous support, and I'm sure you're probably all aware of this initiative by Melanie Roos and the Gorleston Beach Clean Group, where they raised some money and bought the stock of the yacht shop at Gorleston Front, packaged it up and sent it to inland centres where it could be used, where they could be used safely, well away from water and the sea. Other initiatives in Great Yarmouth, members of your committee supported the Sealy campaign last year, and that's an image on the front. The campaign was relaunched this year in Great Yarmouth when ITV came to film in May the campaign in action, and councillors Barbara and Kerry Payne-Robertson came along with me to talk to some of the shops. We were really heartened to find that many of your shops in Great Yarmouth, including those on Regent's Road and many of the shops and kiosks on the front, had stopped selling the rings because of the seals. However, some of the big chain shops, including the pound shops, were still stocking them, and I believe that you have written to them. Karen Youngs from the Greater Yarmouth Tourist and Business Improvement Area linked us up with the Sea Life Centre, and we worked with them to make this display, which is up in their native species section. And that went up right at the beginning of the summer holiday. And she also talked to Haven Seashore Holiday Park to ask if they would stop selling flying rings, which we had reported to be seen in their Nisa local shops, and they agreed to do that. Over the 3 years that we've been running the campaign so far, we have had extensive media coverage, and as well as the TV, we were covered on regional, we've been covered by news in East Anglia, and last year the press release on the Sealy tour went nationwide as far as Aberdeen, Bournemouth and Belfast. Our campaign future aim is very simple, and these are the steps we think will make it work. But the challenges continue to be formidable. Most of the suppliers are still ordering and importing thousands of these cheap plastic rings, and there are other all sorts of different frisbees with holes in. Shops are still selling them, and a lot of people are still not aware that there is a danger to seals from the rings. And we found a lot of visitors that come from inland, for example, aren't aware. So we're asking and hoping that Great Yarmouth yourselves will continue to promote the campaign and to help us to save the seals from these injuries. Thank you very much. Oh, I've got one more, sorry. This is a lovely image to finish on, and it is Pinkerfoe, who you saw at Death's Door earlier, and she did make a very good recovery. She will always have, as all these seals will have, the wedge-shaped wound in her neck, but you can see she's put on a lot of weight, and she was released back to her beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I've got a couple of questions and comments, but before you have to hear my voice, I don't know if any members want to speak first or ask any questions. Councillor Hammond and Councillor Talbot, and then Councillor Robinson-Payne.
Hello, thank you for that presentation. That was absolutely wonderful. And I can't believe how much good work you're doing. It really is to be commended. Whilst you were speaking, I came up with some questions, but you answered them. So I just really wanted to thank you for the presentation, the good work you're doing, and I really do hope we will continue to support you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Talbot.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I've seen these posters displayed in my children's school. They go to Northgate, and I see them as I walk them into school in the morning. So I think it's fantastic that you're raising so much awareness. And even though I've seen the posters, I didn't realise quite how horrific the wounds that the seals suffer really are, and it is gut-wrenching to know that they go through that. I wanted to say again, thank you for the presentation. It was very, very informative, and it was lovely to see. Was it Pinkerfoe at the end?
Yes.
Going off into the sea? It's lovely to know that they're getting rescued. My question is, can we as a committee write to, I don't know, Boris Johnson or whoever, and ask him to consider making these illegal? I know it's a big thing, but can we as a small committee do anything? Because everything's got to start somewhere, right?
The committee can write a letter if we want to write a letter. Is that a proposal?
I guess it is.
Fair enough. Do we have a seconder? I'm happy to say. Oh, Donna's put her hand up before I finish my sentence, so Donna's happy to second. So, all in favour? So I think that's unanimous. So I think the answer is yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Fair enough. Councillor Robinson-Payne.
Thank you, Chair. big congratulations, Jenny. When I came out with you, I mean, I knew a lot of what was going on, but you opened my eyes to a lot more. And I love the determination that you've got to bring that awareness, because so many people we spoke to didn't realise how dangerous these frisbees were. And myself and Babs and you, when we went into the shops, ironically, some of those solid frisbees were cheaper to buy than the ring ones, which just seemed crazy. Why are they still selling them? We did have some success with one particular shop that took them off the shelves straight away, but obviously it is these bigger chains that we do need to tackle more. The smaller shops seem to understand, and they're doing their best to not stock them, or totally stop. And so I just think all the work that you do is really wonderful, and I can't commend you highly enough. And keep on raising awareness, because hopefully we all certainly will, and we all support you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson-Payne. Councillor Bensley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, massive congratulations on all the hard work that you're doing along our coastlines, and thank you for helping the seals. I'm lucky enough in Hemsby and Scrappy that we've got 2 of your signs as people enter the beach, so education for the tourists and locals as well. That does help, because them pictures do say 1,000 words. But I think I can speak for all members here when we were all disappointed and shocked with the images that we see in the summertime, whether it be human interaction with the seals when they get too close for selfies, and what should I say, other outrageous behaviour that, quite frankly, we're exhausted by what you see with human interaction with some of them, and the total lack of respect for Mother Nature. But I was wondering how best we can address that situation, as well as the frisbees with the holes in, and as well the plastic pollution, because we're trying so hard to get the tourist economy as like the circular economy with tourists coming down here, but we also need to educate them that the coastline is a playground, but also you have to be very respectful of it. I mean, we have to educate them and be respectful of our coastline. So if you take a picnic down there, that's okay taking it down there, but how do we change their mannerisms as such where they will take the litter back home with them as well? So we're trying to face this front on 2 different levels, but I strongly believe we can use the seals as a focal point in saving the plastic pollution going in our oceans, the education of humans, no doubt, because these seals have been here long before we have, and they look after themselves. I always find it quite amusing that you call yourselves seal wardens, where really the seals can look after themselves, you're just managing the humans, which is kind of ironic as such. But the signs, the plastic pollution, and as I said, we welcome the tourists, we embrace them coming to our coastline. But I was wondering, the brochures that the holiday firms also put out to entice consumers to come here, maybe we could put a little advert in each of them brochures, but that's something that we could explore together. But we're fully supportive of you in this committee, I believe, and just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll help you as the maximum we can. But just going back, as one of the other councillors mentioned, our local independent shops, I believe they're much more accessible to work with us than the big, as I said, the big chains, because they're kind of elusive into who can we contact. But the local shops, and I can only speak for Hemsby, they've been very helpful in Hemsby Beach Road, helping to not stock this sort of frisbee, but also listening to Councillor Robinson-Payne and Councillor Barbara Wright, the impact that they've had and the success along Yarmouth seafront is very encouraging. So hopefully we can all work together in educating the general public a little bit more. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Can I just answer some of those?
Of course, fire away, Jenny.
Just one example is the North Norfolk District Council Safer Seals campaign, and I think I'd really love it if you could consider Great Yarmouth doing a similar campaign, and do keep this, but this includes the flying rings, keeping dogs on leads because of the seals, and also keeping a distance from the seals. I'd suggest it was in brighter colours and as big as possible. But if the council was willing to sort of make your own campaign, I think that gives it a lot of impetus. Our leaflet does link to plastic pollution in the sea and taking litter home. And the other suggestion is whether it would be possible for you as a council to thank the independent shops in Great Yarmouth, because I feel that I think it's the only place I've been where I actually felt a lot of sympathy for those traders, with all the beach toys they had. And I had a lot of sympathy and respect by the fact they were thinking about the seals. So if it was possible to do a thank you to those shops, I think that would be great. And I feel it is an ongoing thing. You bring something up and it's shown in the media, and then generally the media don't want to know about it again. The media here have been very good, and they have, they have come back to the campaign. But I think it's a similar effect with people. They hear about it, and then they sort of can forget about it, and really we need to keep the impetus and going, just as you say. And I agree with everything you've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Just quickly before I ask a couple of questions, a thought has just occurred to me. Obviously, we have just passed a motion saying we would write to the Prime Minister. On reflection, I actually think it would be more sensible if we wrote to the Secretary of State for DEFRA, because that's the department which would be covering these kind of issues. So rather than sending it to where it would be immediately transferred, if the committee is happy, I would suggest that we just amend that recommendation so we go straight into the department which it would get transferred into if the committee is happy with that. Do I need to have a proposer and seconder for that, or are you just happy for me just to take that? As I said, it was a fairly off-the-cuff thing in terms of developments. It occurred to me. Obviously, reiterating, Jenny, all the points being made by my colleagues in terms of thanking you for all your work, I just wanted to know, do we have a sense of how much of the damage caused to the local seals come immediately from the pollution from our beaches, and how far is it also a problem from beaches further up where they're doing the exact same thing, then of course the tide is washing it round? And if they, I appreciate you can't say there's a ring, we can trace it and we know it was thrown off in Skegness, but is there a perception of this problem across areas, or are we dealing with it locally but not necessarily in the other areas?
We don't know exactly. I think all I can say is that a lot of the seals have been photographed at Horsey or Winterton beaches, but that may be because there are so many wardens and so many public there to see them. We know that seals have been caught in rings up in North Yorkshire and in Cornwall as well. So it's not just an East Anglia thing. And in terms of plastic moving in the ocean, I'm sure there is research on that, but I'm not aware of anything specific on the rings, but I'm sure there is research on how plastic moves, so we would be interested in that.
Thank you. And then one other just quick question. Obviously, we're talking about rings at the moment because obviously they are the one which has the most immediate impact, especially on a visual level for seals. But, in a magic world where we could flick our fingers and that problem is resolved, what is the next biggest issue in terms of threats to the seal population? In terms of man-made kind of things in that sense? Is it the dogs on the beaches, or is there another pollutant we're putting out there which causes the problem?
Well, disturbance in dogs they can kill and hurt particular seals. And in terms of other problems, fishing line is something else that seals and a lot of other sea mammals get constantly caught in. The reason this campaign focused on the plastic flying rings is that it was something that we felt we could influence and do something about. It's unnecessary, and it's, you know, people can do something about it by not taking them, not using them or banning them from the beaches. Whereas fishing line is, it is known about, and DEFRA, I understand, is looking at it, but it's a huge problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And then just to kind of round the meeting off, you did reference writing to the companies which have said that they were going to stop doing the rings. I think we have already done that, but certainly I think it is worth us doing that again to reiterate, to make the point, because actually now in the next couple of months, that will be when they start doing the ordering of the stock. So there's absolutely no shame in bringing that back up. And this, you know, you very kindly agreed to do this. I just want to remind you again to thank you on it. And also potentially us writing again to the local chains to remind them of it. And in terms of your question about trying to do a council-based campaign, I mean, I'm sure I speak for the entire committee when I say I think that's something we would be keen to look into, certainly. So I don't know whether, Kate, you'd be able to arrange for an officer to have a chat in due course on that.
Yeah, so in terms of the letter, happy to send the letter out again. What I suggest is, I'm not sure if the original letter, we wrote to all the local stores, so for example, Poundland, but it might be worth sending a copy of that letter to the head office as well, because that's ultimately where they make those types of decisions around what the goods are in the shops that are sold. So happy to do that again. In the original letter, we did thank the small independents. So we said, you know, if you've already addressed this issue, it's really appreciated. You're making a difference. So we can just reiterate that as well. Absolutely to work to put together a campaign. I'm assuming that some of the members in this room might want to get involved with that, and we can look at how we can best deliver that, probably as a start of the tourist season next year, so that we can raise some awareness around this issue. So really happy to be able to take that forwards as an action. And I think the only other point to raise is in terms of James is our head of environmental health. You mentioned that the other two local authority areas are looking at PSPOs. We're not entirely sure how far they'll get with that, but we're absolutely more than happy to look at that as a possible enforcement route to try and address this issue as well. So I think, James, you'd be happy to talk to the officers in the other two authorities to understand their approach to how they're trying to bring in some enforcement around this issue, if members are happy for of course, for us to do that.
Can I just add one thing? You have one big supplier here, which is Palgrave Toys. And they supply these sorts of rings. And we did have a meeting with them, and Lindsay Hall, the managing director, was you know, very helpful and friendly, and said that she would explain the problem to her sales team, but she fell short of saying she wouldn't order them because she said that she didn't want to lose any of her customers. I think it's a catch-22 situation. She didn't want to lose them to the other suppliers. But if one big supplier stopped, you know, that might have a good effect on the others. Thank you.
I suspect this is one where the solution is the demand rather than supplied aspect, but I do take your point. Councillor Talbot, I saw you put your hand up, and then Councillor Wright, and then Councillor Bird.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. It was just a query. Something I've always lived by is to solve a problem is a bit of short, sharp shock. Can we include one of these with the images in the letters that we're going to send to the shops, to Poundland and whatnot, so that they can actually physically see what the problem is? Because as Councillor Bensley so aptly put it, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and we can write all day long about what's happening, but unless they can actually see it, they are not going to understand.
So, Carrie, we did that with the first letter we sent. We contained the leaflet, but happy again to do that again. I just want to make sure that the letter does thank those businesses that have done the right thing so that we just don't disengage people that are obviously on the journey with us around this issue. But yeah, we're happy to repeat that again.
Sorry,
Carrie.
I should have said I did actually mean like the big stores like Poundland and their head office, because where they are probably not based anywhere near the coast, they probably aren't even aware this is a problem.
Yeah, and I think tonight we've also heard some contextual issues that we can actually build into the correspondence about the declining number of seals and why this is particularly important for this area. So I think that's been really helpful to help us with that correspondence.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wright.
I just want to say thank you, Jenny, for a lovely presentation. That was, and I admire you so much, and thank you for what you do. I mean, we can all do the talk, but you do the walk. And thank you so much on behalf of looking after those seals. I admire you.
Thank you.
For you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Bird.
Yes, just to say, the other problem I think we were having was the netting that came with the package of buckets and spades all in one, and they discharged the net. And that also gets, children dig by the water, that also gets washed into the water system, and although it's a pollution, it can, I think, as well cause problems with the young pups that get them over the faces and such. And we should really look at that sort of side of it as well. We never used to have that sort of package. Buckets and spades were always sold separately, but now they seem to come in a package, which I think is a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. In terms of the report, obviously I think we've discussed it. We've made a number of recommendations. Are members happy to note and for just formally thank Jennifer again for her time today and for all of her work? Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you again, Jennifer. Thank you. So moving on to item 6, we have the Norfolk Strategic Flooding Alliance Strategy and Action Plan, which is going to be presented remotely by Karen Thomas. And so now the magic of technology will work. It actually has.
Good evening, everyone.
My doubt was unfair. So, Karen, would you like to begin?
Yeah, could I just start by saying thank you to Jennifer as well. I've had the opportunity to see her presentation at the Norfolk Coastal Forum, and as someone who likes to visit the seals with my daughter, I'm also quite shocked at how some people behave. So thank you very much, Jennifer. That was a brilliant presentation. Yes, so your amazing IT guys at that end are going to put up a presentation from me. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for having me at the committee this evening. I'm Karen Thomas and I head up Coastal Partnership East, and we effectively look after your coastal erosion and some of your flood risk issues along with North Norfolk District Council and also with East Suffolk Council. And so we stretch across the coast managing those coastal flood risk and erosion risk issues for you, and as Penny and James are here tonight as my board members as well. So I've been working with David Glasson and Jane Beck, and I've been in discussions as well with the 3 chief execs from Great Yarmouth Borough Council and also from North Norfolk and Kings Lynn Borough Councils to talk about this Norfolk Strategic Flood Alliance strategy. Thank you. So moving away from the coast for a moment, back in December last year, Christmas, and into January, there was some very, very significant flood events across our region. And people, particularly in the sort of Beccles and around the Norwich areas, were seriously impacted by what we call pluvial flooding, surface water flooding, as heavy downpours just dumped huge amounts of water into areas which then very rapidly flooded. Drainage systems were overwhelmed, and it was just unprecedented rainfall events. And unfortunately, due to people flooding who'd never experienced flooding before, and perhaps people who weren't normally flooded in this way. It was coming down people's driveways from roads, it was coming up through drains. It did lead to people being taken by surprise, if you like, and also it stretched many of the services that we have across the region in terms of the Environment Agency, internal drainage boards, our local authority responses, and the county council lead flood authorities as well, with all of our utility companies. And as a result of that, it also became clear that from a community's perspective, there was a challenge, that there was a lack of clear sight about who they could contact when they flooded, because although we all have different responsibilities for different types of flood risk and erosion risk, if you have flooded yourself, you would just like to be able to get hold of somebody and talk to them about it. So what's happened in response to this very serious flooding that occurred last Christmas is that Lord Dannatt has set up the Norfolk Strategic Flooding Alliance, and over the majority of this year really has brought together risk management authorities, utilities and infrastructure providers, and tried to establish a kind of framework and protocol, if you like, for working together, and also to ensure that people, when they flood, know exactly who they can contact and what they can do. And obviously a lot of this is already in place already. Colleagues at the Environment Agency have Floodline, and many of our risk management authority partners all have a response role to play. But clearly when we have these very large extreme events that perhaps have multiple different flooding sources and flooding impacts, there was a need to bring it all together. So over the last 9 months, we've all been working together to pull together an inland and coastal flooding strategy, and we've needed to look at our governance structures to make sure that we're all integrated. I've been working with the colleagues at Great Yarmouth Borough Council and across the Norfolk stakeholder groups as well to agree what I think is a new governance structure from a coastal perspective, because it became apparent when people were talking about flood risk from the pluvial and fluvial events that happened earlier this year, that we also needed to loop in the coastal aspects too. And as a result of that, we have a really strong coastal flooding strategy within this too. So tonight we are looking for ratification from this committee for the strategy and the action plan. And Councillor Carl Smith and Councillor Graham Plant have also been engaged in the meetings to date. And as far as I'm aware, just in terms of the timing of your meeting tonight, most of the other risk management authorities and their governance structures have signed up to the strategy and action plan so far. So everyone's very positive and behind it. So we'll come to the point later about ratifying it. It's a high-level document. It's really all about greater collaboration, making sure there's no gaps. It doesn't get into detail about resources and financial implications, but certainly from a coastal perspective, Coastal Partnership East is already in place doing a lot of this work for you, and we don't necessarily envisage there being any significant additional resource need apart from the proposal for supporting a new members group, which I'll come on to in a moment. And I think working with David, we've concluded that there's no legal or financial risks to you as a local authority apart from our officer time attending meetings. But obviously by not signing up to it, then there could be reputational risks. Okay, so looking at what it means for Great Yarmouth, our existing coastal monitoring and modelling around the coast informs our shoreline management plans, which are a high-level 100-year forward look about how we will manage our coast. And out of those, we have prioritised action plans to move projects forward. So they're already there, and we invest around the coast based on risk and need, and we have a set of priorities to do that. So in terms of fluvial and tidal risk in the town of Great Yarmouth, you've already got schemes in place looking at how to improve the resilience of Great Yarmouth in the centre of the town. You're well into the second phase of works with the Environment Agency and moving into the Epoch 3 works as well. And CPE will be getting more involved with that going forward. CPE, we've also been successful in getting some funding to explore how we can improve resilience in the town of Great Yarmouth, and alongside work that we've already been working on at Hemsby in particular. So you're already seeing good work going on around the coast, which involves us working with our partners and looking for additional funding. And also just to assure everybody that when we do have emergencies and things perhaps don't quite go how we would like them to, perhaps there's been a big surge event or, there's been a big storm, then we have emergency powers to undertake works as well. And so that's the sort of thing that we've got going on at the North Dean's Wall at the moment. And we already work very closely with the Environment Agency and other risk management authorities when we have a tidal surge. And these things are very well modelled and very well understood. We get plenty of warning from the Environment Agency that a coastal surge is coming. And we have a very well established response to that surge event, how we all work together, how we warn people, and then how we get people prepared, responding and recovering. And I think from the Strategic Flood Alliance's perspective, they could see that the coastal element of this is something that we've been doing for a very long time now. But to be fair, we know what's going to happen with a tidal surge and we know how it will move around the coast and we know who will be impacted and almost when they'll be impacted, depending on the height of the water and the speed of the tide and the waves and the conditions. This is slightly different to the inland flood risk that I showed you at the beginning, which is where some of the challenges have arisen, because with increased rainfall and these very extreme rainfall events, they can happen in one place and cause very devastating flooding, and 5 miles up the road they can have had nothing at all. So there's lots of bigger challenges for the inland flood risk side of things, I think, because of the changing weather patterns that we're seeing. But we did ask ourselves and felt it was a good opportunity to see if we did have any gaps in our approach to flood risk management around the coast. So it's just to show you our shoreline management plan areas. Each section of the coast is divided into an area that has coastal processes that are connected. And for Great Yarmouth, you fall into the shoreline management plan number 6, which is the sort of the Norfolk plan, and you have the Suffolk shoreline management plan to your south, and obviously going round the coast beyond Snettisham and Kellinghard, you have SMP5, which is then going into the King's Lynn area, and then going round into the Wash for SMP4. And in terms of our governance structure, Coastal Partnership East extends from Felixstowe at East Suffolk all the way round to Snettisham. So we cover Great Yarmouth, East Suffolk and North Norfolk District Council frontages, but we don't cover the whole of Norfolk. And what we've done is we've had a conversation with the King's Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council to talk about that gap, if you like, which is shown there from Old Hunstanton, the red line there, going round to Kellinghard, which Coastal Partnership East doesn't look after. And King's Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council are responsible for. And we did think that maybe there was an opportunity for some joined up thinking and working at a strategic level with our members, and also going forward at shoreline management plan level as well. And we also thought there could be some other opportunities here too. So each of our local authorities currently pays money into the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee. And we have Norfolk County Council councillors who sit on the RFCC. And we wanted to strengthen the relationship between them and the coast where we could. So we saw an opportunity to perhaps do some work there. And we also really reflected on all of the different groups that are already in place for looking at the coast, and decided that probably going back to the original issue that the local people had raised, which is clear line of sight, that perhaps we had lots of groups, but we needed to perhaps bring together one group where members could come together from around the Norfolk coast. So what we've proposed is that we would have a new Norfolk Coastal Members Group, and 2 of my members are here tonight at committee from CPE's board, but we would be looking to have a couple of members from Great Yarmouth, from North Norfolk and from King's Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Councils. And then we would also have a member from Norfolk County Council, who ideally is the RFCC rep. And we would also have a representative from the wider King's Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council shoreline management plan frontage going into the Wash, so that those members could come together twice a year, make sure that we are completing the strategy action plan actions, and also to bring together coastal work and thinking from existing groups which are in the blue boxes below. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We've already got Norfolk Resilience partnership with resilience officers who attend that. So that's one aspect of the technical operational side of things. And obviously we have as well the East Anglian Coastal Group, which myself and some of my colleagues attend, where we talk about shoreline management plans and broader coastal erosion and flood risk issues and how we're going to deal with those. And one other area which we decided, we had a really good Norfolk Coastal Forum, but we thought actually if we tweaked that slightly and made that the Norfolk Coastal Forum, we could extend into Great Yarmouth and up into the Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council areas. And we actually have a conference next week, which is going to be the first time we've brought together the Norfolk and the Suffolk forums, and we will be therefore bringing together stakeholders from around the whole coast of Norfolk and Suffolk. And going forward, we want to make sure that we have that buy-in from stakeholders across the Norfolk coast. So overall, I think what we wanted to just get across is that there was an opportunity to strengthen strategic governance for coastal management across Norfolk, and that the new Norfolk Coastal Management Members Group is something we've proposed to lead on the Norfolk Strategic Flood Alliance's coastal issues. We think that they can then support the Norfolk coastal communities with coastal erosion and flood risk issues at a strategic level. And also we can report back into the Norfolk Strategic Flood Alliance that we are progressing the strategy and the actions. And also I think we've demonstrated that we have been able to improve linkages between the partnership that I head up and with Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council. And obviously we think we can have better linkages with the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee and also national decision makers as well. And also we are looking to bring together both the East Anglian Coastal Group officers and Resilience Forum officers on a more regular basis. So overall, we hope that this is something that you feel has been a useful piece of work. And I think we're very pleased to see how it's all come together. So therefore, we just want to recommend to you that the Norfolk Strategic Flood Alliance Strategy and Action Plan are documents that support the work we already do. There's no significant risks to Great Yarmouth Borough Council in signing up to these, and it basically supports a much more collaborative approach to flood and water and coastal erosion management across the whole of Norfolk, and allows us to better plan with our colleagues across all of the councils. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from members? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Karen.
Hi.
It's nice to see you, looking so fit and healthy. Thank you for the report, and I have to say your extensive knowledge and the phenomenal amount of work undertaken by yourself and your team, and you've prepared this as well. So for me personally, as your chairman, thank you for that. I need to ask you a question though. On page 22 of your draft report, I don't know whether you'll know the question, the answer to that, but Lord Dannett and George Freeman MP wrote on June the 23rd regarding the concerns over two planning policy matters. The first regarding automatic rights for developers to connect surface water from new developments to the sewage system. I don't know whether anybody's had any reply back from that. The reason I'm asking, because I attended a WRE briefing today, and I did bring that subject up about how can we as councillors help with the developers, particularly about putting water meters and things like that in, because obviously I know by 2050 we will be not fighting for water, but with the agricultural and the build in East Anglia, then water could be quite short at some stage. So I wonder if you can answer that question for me. Thank you.
I don't know the answer to whether or not they've had a response to it. I do know when I worked at the internal drainage boards for the Water Management Alliance that this issue was being discussed at both Norfolk County and Suffolk County flood risk partnership discussions that we all attend quarterly at an officer level. There's certainly a concern that developers can just plug straight into the system, and there is no good use then made of water in terms of storing it for later use. And also there's a lot of benefits, obviously. I know the work that WRE are doing are certainly exploring that. So I think probably the answer to that, Penny, is I would say I don't know the answer, but I can go and find out.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Fairhead.
Hello. Before I'll start on what I was going to say, I might be able to help on that one because I sit on the IDBs, and I know since they have the Water Management Alliance on all of those boards now, they actually have somebody who sits on there who looks at planning and where they're building the houses and things. And I know that they report regularly now with the planning department here, and when you read through their minutes, there whether they recommend that should be built on and things should be done. So I think there is the connection there. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Thank you, Councillor Fairhead.
Anyway, what was I going to say now? Yeah, no, I'm pleased to read this. I really am pleased to see this because, as I've said, I sit on the IDBs, and I found it very frustrating to go on there to start with because nobody seemed to connect with anybody else, and yet all these people had all their different input, but they didn't all come together. And like I said, since they have progressed with the Water Management Alliance, and it's good to see that, you know, when we have the meetings with the IDBs, all the people that come from all the different departments that sit around all the table, you know, it is good, and this is enhancing it big time. And I think it's really good to see that you have included all the people that come in on whatever water board sort of thing they do, because it is important. And I think Yarmouth too has a mix of water sometimes where other places around the coast don't, because we have, when it comes up the harbour with a tidal surge, well, you have to be very careful. And I know there's already problems with that, and that leads into the IDBs because, you know, if the salt water gets up into the Broads, etc., we have a problem with the fish, and that leads into tourism and everything else. But anyway, on the whole, I'm really, really pleased to see this and all the people come together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bensley.
Evening, Karen. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to say Coastal Partnership East is a wonderful example of local authorities working together. And just following on from Councillor Marlene comments just now, would this be a lovely conduit for information to have all these resources together and working? I mean, there's never been anything like this done before, because this issue is, what should I say, well, this challenge of water and coastal communities and the erosion that we're facing and the extreme weather events that are happening more often than not. This is all new to us as humans and as a species. Can this new what should I say, this new chapter in working together and collaboration, will this divert assets and attentions from others, or this is going to be really, really helpful, like CPE, please?
Hi, James. I think it's really interesting because I feel we took a proportionate approach from the coastal perspective. I think we thought we had it all covered and we knew what we were doing as a partnership. So we knew that we were doing what we were doing. And obviously you as a board member have oversight of what we do. I think it was really interesting, though, to suddenly realise that there were people on the Norfolk coast that weren't included directly in some of the things that we do. And we took this, or I think we took this opportunity for a bit of reflection, actually. From a coastal perspective, as I say, we've got a long history of working with the Environment Agency, local authorities, the IDBs, when it comes to a tidal surge. I think the new thing that's happening is very much these very, very severe and torrential downpours, which can hit anybody at any time and are not easy to either sort of plan for or deal with when they happen. So I think any opportunity for collaborative working is always for the best. It's something that I think we've demonstrated at Coastal Partnership East works, whether it's with a community that wants to try and do something or a partner. I think the WMA as an alliance looking after the internal drainage boards, and now more recently the Water Resources East sort of framework as well, looking at both drought and flood in the same piece. I think all of this is a really important time. A lot of very important strategic climate change challenges are coming together, and I think as people we've got to come together, and I think this gives us a really good opportunity with this Norfolk Strategic Flood Alliance.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Bensley, do you want a very quick follow-up?
Yeah, very quickly, just come back. Yeah, thank you, Karen. That's near enough exactly what I wanted to hear, us all working together and pulling for the same objectives for our coastal communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bensley. Right, okay, committee, we're asked to recommend the recommendations are one, in that, it's a very interesting phrasing actually, but one, endorse the Norfolk Strategic Flooding Alliance Strategy and Action Plan as set out in Appendix 1 to this report. 2, support a collaborative approach to flooding and water management in Norfolk. 3, ensure that there continues to be a planned and resilient approach to flooding across the county. All members in favour? Well, mathematically it's impossible for there to be anyone else for against or abstention, so that's unanimous, so thank you. Brilliant, so that's passed. So,
thank you.
Brilliant, and thank you for your time, Karen, today.
Could I also just really apologise? I really wanted to be there tonight. I had enough fuel to get me there, but I didn't have enough fuel to get home again, so thank you very much for letting me join you this way.
There's plenty of wonderful hotels you could have stayed in Yarmouth.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. And as I said,
bye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. So, as I said, item 7, Project Facet, has been delayed. So, moving on to item 8, Garden Waste Report. James, for a verbal update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a presentation to go with that. So,
brilliant. Not just a verbal update.
So following on from last meeting's presentation around recycling and waste update, I promised a bit more of a detailed look at the garden waste service. So my colleagues have helped me pull this together, this report, just to go through where we're at with the garden waste service. So just a bit of a service overview initially. Obviously, the service is now 10 years old. During that time, we've seen a massive increase in subscribers since year 1, 530%. It's a borough-wide service. Obviously, it's mainly in the Gorston location and our outer parishes. Obviously, that's where the gardens are, so obviously that's where the service is needed the most. It has 2 full-time rounds at the moment. We are looking at those rounds in terms of can they be more efficient, but I'll come on to that in a little while. Obviously, our tonnage is heavier from March to October. Obviously, drops off in the winter. We are struggling at times, I would say, due to the significantly longer rounds during the summer months, which is the reason we need to review some of those rounds a little. So taken to Case Transfer Station, which is then loaded and sent to Marsham and other composting sites, and we are charged a gate fee to do that of 40.50 a tonne. It's turned into soil improver. It's not seen as compost, doesn't quite meet the standards. However, that's the same across all Norfolk authorities in relation to the collection of garden waste. It is a fortnightly collection. You get 25 collections a year with a 2-week break over Christmas. Bag customers can phone in and get a collection, and I've just put the prices up there in relation to the covering of both the new subscriber, which covers the provision of the bin, and then the renewal cost at 51.50. That comparable to most other authorities across Norfolk. Some are slightly higher, some are slightly lower, but it's in the ballpark where we need to be. And obviously bags, you can see, is costed on that. If you have multiple bins, you do get a discount, and it accepts grass cuttings, leaves, twigs, etc. They will also take uncooked peelings as well, which we do get in there as well. So uncooked peelings are allowed. It's when you get any cooked products and anything from that causes an issue with the composting facility, because it's not to the desired standard to be able to deal with those. And as I said, any other food waste would cause significant issues with the processing of that compost. Current position, so it's an annual subscription service, and you get the 2 4-litre bins. We do have some communal bins in some of our housing areas, so that's provided in some localities to deal with some of those where people can't have the individual bins and we have some of those, and that's something we need to look at as whether that's something we can actually progress further. As you can see, over 10,000 subscriptions now, which is a huge increase, and we thought there's probably a maximum of about 1,400 across the borough, so we've done really well in terms of getting as close as we can to that. We get some drop-off, etc. during that, but that's where we tend to be on average. As you can see, this year to date, 2,381 tonnes has been collected. That's over 500 tonnes up on the same time last year. So we are seeing a huge increase in tonnage of garden waste. Record month in June with 620 tonnes collected. I think the COVID effect has massively increased in people's gardening, etc. But even more so, obviously June wasn't in that, but there is still an increase in the amount of garden waste being collected, because I think people are doing things differently and spending more time in their gardens potentially. So the COVID effect will continue, I think, and I think others are seeing exactly the same across Norfolk. Just a bit of an overview to show you the growth, really. 2015-16 on there, I think we put a lot of effort into publicising, is my understanding, before my time, but that was when some publicity, etc. has gone out, and you can see we've had growth right up to where we are in terms of that. I think it equates to around 12,000 plus bins that are out there, because there's more people who have multiple subscriptions. So we've done a number of growth initiatives. These have been listed here. I suppose the one that went out most recently, we did a leaflet that went out to every borough and every property in the borough, both promoting composting, obviously in relation to circular economy, that doing the composting on site is the preferred method, but also promoting our garden bin service. That led to a massive increase in customers phoning us up and wanting to get signed on to the service. So that was a really good. We are looking at the moment to make it potentially automatic direct debits, which other authorities across Norfolk use, to save some processing time in relation to having to deal with new customers coming on board, etc. So that's something we're looking at as an efficiency at the moment. As I rightly said, 14,000 properties is where we thought the service could get to. We are doing very well close to that. We had a second round introduced when we got to 5,500 customers. Obviously 10,500 reach is sort of where we're at with our next pinch point. We're having discussions with GYBS. There are, I think, at times it was a driver and one crew member, one loader. It's looking like it's likely to have to be a driver plus two during our peak season in both of those vehicles to be able to cope with the number of bins they're having to empty. If we get to a point where an extra round is required, then obviously you need to get your subscriptions up more significantly to be able to cover the cost of an extra vehicle. That's something we're not in a position at the moment. We think with some slight tweaking of the rounds and some efficiencies there, we'll be able to cope. We have got obviously the option to introduce Saturday collections or later collections. That's something we get to the point where we can't deal with the existing load. Just a bit of an update on the disruption to service during COVID. Obviously, during the first lockdown, we suspended the service for 6 weeks so that staff could support other things that was around taxiing other crews into social distancing in vehicles, etc. We had another small suspension during February when we had the ice and snow where we could not get out to those localities. So those subscriptions have just been extended accordingly, which does impact a little bit, but it's allowed us to, I think, the tonnage recovery in the subsequent ones. So we have still seen an increase even with those suspension of services. So it's not impacted overall on the amount we've been able to collect. So I think that's a positive sign and one to move forward with. Obviously, we've talked about the government waste proposals. Just wanted to quickly go through those with you. There is the consistency around recycling. There is the proposal that garden waste be included as one of the recycling streams, which means that everybody would have to do it. Some authorities don't offer it at the moment. There is a possibility that they are saying that it might be offered as a free service or charges might be capped. Obviously, that would impact on us financially. We're waiting, and we've commented back along those lines to central government. And it could be offered to we may have to offer to any property or deliver a bin to every property and offer it as an ongoing service. Obviously, that would impact potentially in some of our urban areas where we have to provide a bin potentially because we're required to under legislation. However, They may not have a garden, and they may not want a bin, or where do they store those bins? So things to resolve as we move forward through the consultation period. And that's it really. Just to overview really, that is a very positive stance at the moment, positive position, and we hope to continue to grow the service as much as we can. Any questions, anybody?
Thank you, James. Councillor Talbot, then Councillor Waters-Bunn, and then Councillor Robinson-Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you already answered this. I think you did, but I'm not sure. Some of the gardens in Central and Northgate and areas like that are really quite small. Is it allowed for sort of possibly a block, 3 or 4 houses, to chip in and share a bin? Or is that frowned upon? Because I'm just thinking, if you've got, I know myself, I've got a very small front and very small back garden, I wouldn't need a big bin. So where do we stand with that?
So we have some communal bins in relation to our housing areas. However, if there is a number of residents who would like to get together and one person purchases that bin and then it's just shared locally, and then the others chip in towards the cost of that, there is nothing to stop that at all, because it's just one bin collected. That would be fine, absolutely no problem at all.
Thank you.
Just on that, I might be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure when I last saw some promotional material for it, it actually did say if you don't think you have enough for your own garden, there's no reason why you couldn't do it as a collaborative thing with neighbours, and that's, you know, it's obviously an eminently sensible way to handle that kind of situation. Councillor Waters-Bunn.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back, James, to the growth initiatives page, you've put there a banning of garden waste in residual bins. I have a little bit of an issue with that. As you're aware, most properties in Great Yarmouth don't have much garden. People tend to sweep out their backyard from fallen pollen and leaves and branches that have fell from borough-owned trees. And of course, where else are they to put that waste apart from in their residual bins? So why are we trying to ban use of those residual bins for very small amounts of garden material that inevitably haven't actually come from the homeowner?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the banning came in, it was a Norfolk-wide ban in relation to that. I think it's associated with slightly more than what you've talked about. I think if it is small sweepings from a yard and small amounts of garden waste, it's not a significant issue. It's where you've got someone doing significant gardening, large amounts of both grass cuttings or other material going into the bin that has a big impact. I think it's, from what you described, there is nothing wrong with that going into the residual waste bin for along those lines, not at all.
Okay. Can we just make the public aware of that then? Because to be fair, saying Norfolk has banned you putting any garden waste in your bin, this time of year is a perfect example. This wind is a perfect example. The leaves in people's backyards, front gardens, up against their front gates, on their pavements, on their driveways, is phenomenal at the moment. So there's no choice apart from to put it in their residual bins. They don't need to spend money on a garden recycling bin when they don't have gardens, and I think it's a bit harsh for us to be telling our residents that you can't put anything like this in that bin, in your black bags or your black bins, when in reality it isn't their garden that it's coming from.
I'll take a look at the messaging that goes with it in terms of what it states. There is the option, obviously, they can always take that waste to the garden waste household waste recycling centres. They will accept garden waste as well if they're able to get there, so they can do that, so as well as an option if they would like to recycle that in the appropriate way.
Thank you, James. Councillor Robinson-Payne.
Thank you, Chair. That's a little bit of a follow-on from Paula, actually. It's more about what is acceptable in those bins. How often do we promote like a new list to the borough? A little bit like the ordinary black bins, or green bins rather, when things change, you know, recycling, some things are allowed, some things aren't. You know, I mean, I know it might be obvious, but I didn't realise about the potato peelings and, you know, that kind of thing going. That was new to me. So how many other people don't know that they can do that if they haven't got a composter? So I just wondered, you know, when do we actually physically advertise this to the public?
So recently advertised it, so with the leaflets that went out with the bins, it's not something we've probably done for a while, so I think we can probably look at that again in terms of promoting what can be put in a bin and the service as a whole. So yeah, no, I'm happy to take that forward, thank you.
Just thinking on that, James, when you send out a renewed abound bin, of course you obviously get the sticker, etc. There's no, you know, saying which for each year you get a new one. There's no reason why potentially you could actually have on the sticker a tick and an X box, you know, in terms of what's allowed and what isn't, just as an instant visual reminder, not just for yourself when you're doing it, but as you walk along, you're, you know, kind of just going along in the background. So that's something that might be worth considering. Any other? Oh, Councillor Fairhead.
Sorry, I'm just going to be cheeky here. Tomorrow night there is a members' briefing on this. Is this the same presentation as we've had tonight, or is it a different one?
No, the members' briefing is in relation to the next item, which is the route review.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, right, okay.
But just quickly on that, my understanding is that the members' briefing is to be more details about the specifics of the changes, rather than the overarching kind of broad raw figures on that. Yeah. So any more questions or queries or comments rather, I suppose? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to say to James, I mean, that's a brilliant scheme for this borough. Huge amounts of waste. When you're talking about 620 tonnes in June, originally that was going to landfill. That's good to see residents taking a responsibility for the environment and their actions, and that's a brilliant scheme, very, very cheap, and long may it continue and get bigger. And well done to those crews who do a fantastic job. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. James, do you want to say anything? Fair enough, perfect. Okay, we're asked to, this is just obviously a noting for this report. Are members happy to agree that we've noted, so we can move on to the next, and we can move on to the next item? Agreed? Excellent. So moving on to item 9, household waste and recycling collection review, and once more we're going to use the power of technology. So hopefully Chris will appear, and James. No?
I'm here. Oh, there we go.
Hello, Chris. Are you being joined by James as well? Or
James is just sat in, but just listening in, or right. He might have answers to questions. So yeah, it's just me presenting this.
No worries. Fantastic, Chris. Would you like to take over and do your presentation?
I certainly will, with the aid of somebody moving on the slides. So thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this is the household waste and recycling round review phase 1. This was approved at this committee on the 28th of July. The project aims at to redesign the domestic waste and recycling collection rounds across the borough due to them being imbalanced and inefficient. So just a project update. So the project team we put together. We've got officers from IT, communications, marketing, and James's team at the council. We've got officers from GYBS, and we've got our project manager overseeing and supporting the project as well. So we had a project inception meeting in August to agree the scope, the timeline, processes, risks, and the principles of project management. Integrated Skills Limited, they were appointed. They are the specialist advisors who have the license to use RouteSmart, which is the technology to reorganise the rounds and is widely used by local authorities across the country. Route Smart needs quite a lot of data to sort of put these new routes together, and the first batch was the LLPG, the Local Land and Property Gazetteer, and it also included the assisted collection data as well, which is we've just updated, and the team updated the communications plan as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So the proposed changes, which I'll cover in just a bit more detail, covering the current rounds, the proposed new routes, property growth, level of change, and some route balancing. So if we can go to the current routes, in this slide here, this shows all of the 8 rounds that we've got currently. And there's also the two rows there with the 2 support crews. We haven't used their mileage because they also do other duties as well. So it might have just sort of not been a true reflection of what's going off. So for the baseline, we used all of the mileage and the properties from the 8 rounds. So if we can move now on to the new routes. So there's 9 new balanced rounds. It doesn't require any support crews. There's over 300 miles per week less, and we've also got 2 years worth of growth built into these new routes. So if we can just move on to the next one. So this slide shows where we've built in the growth through the approved planning for the next 2 years. So some there's none, but down in Bradwell there's 351. So there'll be a couple of routes which may be light to start with, but as them new developments move in, it's already planned into their route, and they will just come online onto their route automatic because they are currently built in. So can we go to the next one? So Appendix A in the report shows the level of the change by ward, and there were a number of changes as part of this modelling. So the week change, the day change, and the day and the week change. And there's like 33% with no change. Can we go to the next one? So this is another slide which shows the kind of the changes by ward. I know it impact is quite small, is that? But I think members may have access to this these slides. But you could probably zoom in and just to sort of see how it impacts each ward for these changes. And in Route Smart, we've got a route balancing tool. So you can move the properties around in the background to even the rounds out. So this is the current rounds, and as you can see, again the apologies, the text on the side is in hours, so that goes from 0 to 12 hours. So there's a number of rounds currently. If they didn't get any support, it would take between 10 to 12 hours to complete that daily route. And as you can see from the bar charts, it is very, very inconsistent, but the growth just comes in as the growth, and we have to collect wherever developers develop. So that's how that works. So if we can move on to the next slide. So these are the proposed new routes. Again, there's just some minor tweaks to this, but everything is below 8 hours, all around the 7.5 hour mark, which is their normal day's work. And quite, in comparison to the last slide, you can probably see that, the changes are quite significant. So if we can go to the next slide. So the implementation. So crews have been allocated to a round, and we've tried to keep the crews to their normal area, what they've been working in. Last week and this week, the crews have been fine-tuning their routes, and they'll be signed off tomorrow. The new routes will be ready to go live on the 18th of October. And once we've gone live, we will have a crew on standby if we do have any problems. And once we've gone through 2 passes, we may need to sort of fine-tune some if we find any odd anomaly, but we'll deal with that locally. We won't need to get ISL in to change that. We can do that, and then we'll have a lessons learned session. So we can just move on to the communications plan. So this report is with this committee tonight. When the report was published last week, we had the press releases ready. I also sent out an all-member briefing on the there's an all-member briefing presentation tomorrow night to go into just a bit more detail than this. We've got a dedicated hotline and email. The tag delivery starts next week, and there's a screenshot of the example of the tag on the slide. We've got member drop-in sessions arranged for the 11th of October, and there will be packs available for members who, if they do want to come in, have to make an appointment, just so we can, manage the footfall in the depot. But also we're going to have packs available for the parish councils as well. So we'll also have information available on the website, examples and maps and stuff like that, so members can have a look at how the changes have impacted on their ward and what it will look like with the new rounds. We've got a morning briefing with the crews on the 11th of October. And can you just move on to the next slide? Just go back one, sorry. So, and efficiencies. So this project, well, these are the final outputs. So we've got a reduction in mileage, over 16,600 miles less, over 15,000 litres of fuel less, and an annual reduction in CO2 of 40,000 kilograms. So that's a quick run through of where we're at, and happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. We've got a couple of members with hands up. Just quickly, I just want to make one comment just to thank you and your team for your work on this, because obviously this has been a very quick turnaround, considering that this has been a work maybe 15, 20 years since it's last been done. I was a little bit sceptical when you told me you were going to be able to turn this around so quickly, but I'm very pleased that I've been proven wrong. So well done on getting this done so quickly. It is a much needed piece of work. Councillor Talbot and then Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick query, and I don't know whether or not it is affected, but obviously cutting the hours down that the routes are going to take, I just wondered if that's going to affect the wages of the crews. Are they going to be losing hours, or is their take-home not going to be affected?
Can I come in there, Chair?
Of course, Chris.
Yeah, no changes to terms and conditions. The current routes are kind of inefficient and imbalanced, so they're going to be given a day, a doable day's work. So there's no changes to pay. That will not be affected. They'll get exactly what they're paid now.
Thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. Obviously, I was just concerned where the hours were being cut down. I just didn't want their wages to suffer, but it's great that they're getting a more manageable workload, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Talbot. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris. That's a brilliant report, and I am also very impressed how quickly you've put that all together. Now I feel like I'm criticising, which I'm not. The letter you've put together to send out to the residents, I just wonder if you added a line in it saying something under the idea of you keep putting your bins out where they used to go. I do know that the bin collectors do walk a lot of steps going down passages where somebody, like one bin, hasn't been put down at the end like the others had, just to remind people that they are supposed to put their bins in allocated places.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, there is a process in place to remind any residents who do that, and some do try it on, and the guys do report it back, and we do notify the resident if they do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bensley.
Evening, Chris. Thanks for that presentation. Very interesting to see the changes, but I was really interested to see the last slide that you had regarding the CO2 footprint and the emissions that we're going to cut out into our environment, which I fully endorse and support. I just wanted to ask, had the council or has anybody looked at using a different type of fuel, like regarding diesel? I see some other local authorities are switching to a palm oil-free high-treated vegetable oil in some of their fleets, and I wondered if we've looked into the possibilities of unlocking that for some of our, what should I say, larger or older vehicles, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bensley. Yes, we will be looking at alternative fuels. Unfortunately, we're not there with electric vehicles yet. But you alluded to the HVO, the hydro-treated vegetable oil, which we can use in our vehicles, and there's going to be a group of officers coming together very, very shortly to look at the specification and a procurement for the vehicles, the heavy goods fleet at GYBS, but that will be considered, as will be electric lifters as well.
James, do you want to come back?
I'll just thank you, Chris. That's perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Bird.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chris. We just touched on there regarding bins being collected. As this is all a new initiative for our change, is it possible to require people to bring in their bins rather than leave them 24/7 out on the pavements? Is this initiative something worth following up?
Yes, we have been looking at that in another project, so more certainly we will be looking at that and the messaging to remind people that they have, they've put their bin out before a certain time and they're expected to return it after it's been empty. So yeah, we will be looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Waterspan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, really. Thanks, Chris. Is there any chance we can get some publicity on this, especially in the local press, as well as our online services, prior to the 18th of October? Because everything we tend to do tends to be after things have happened, and I think we really need to turn that tide and notify people and our residents in the borough of what is changing before it actually changes.
Yep, so the comms plan is we've already got some messaging now on social media. The bin tag goes on all bins next week. We'll be then doing some follow-up press releases. Week commencing the 4th and week commencing the 11th when the letters hit the doormats. So yes, the answer is yes. There's going to be we're going to be promoting these changes on various channels.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond, I'm going to be very nice Yes. I know you like bins so much.
I do love the bins, thank you. It's just another quick question. Really, Paul's made me think of it. In the initial week or 2 weeks of this, if people haven't put their bins out because basically they aren't paying attention, will the binman be expected to go up the drive to get the bin down?
The short answer to that will be no, but we will have reports back if we do have pockets of areas which we're finding bins are not being presented. We've got a scratch crew on standby, so we'd probably go and do a bit of door knocking and issuing the letter and stuff like that if it's been missed.
Thank you.
Any more comments and questions? If not, I believe we've to find the exact recommendations. Apologies. It's always how I love getting. Here we go. Oh no, sorry. One of those days. I was so enraptured in your report, Chris. So it says, so the committee is asked to note the update contained within the report and then approve the implementation of the round review as set out in paragraph 3. All in favour? Well, that's unanimous, so we can't have an against and abstention, so that passes. So that now moves us on. Oh, sorry?
I'll just ask one question. The presentation that's going to be happening tomorrow night online, for those of us that are unable to attend that, will we get those slides sent through, if possible, please?
I'm sure Chris can facilitate that.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. It's just I've got my little one tomorrow night and I'll attempt, but I can't promise anything.
I quite understand.
Thank you.
And for what it's worth, just worth reiterating that amongst the offers which came out from in Chris's email, and it was mentioned briefly in the report, he has offered the opportunity to members to go in and have a go through in a bit more detail in their wards in the week beginning the 11th, and I would certainly recommend that members consider doing so, especially if you're in one of the wards with a higher change. So with that item finished, we're now on item 10, any other business. I've not been notified of any other business, so that means the meeting now concludes. Thank you all for your time, and I wish you a safe journey home.